November 1944, Czechoslovakia. The sky was cold, gray, and merciless. Second Lieutenant Bruce Carr, piloting his P-51 Mustang, was on a low strafing run deep in enemy territory. Suddenly, his engine failed, dead silence thousands of feet above hostile ground. Alone, Carr had seconds to act. He radioed his position, jettisoned the canopy, and bailed out into the freezing air. The parachute descent was chaos, wind, pain, and fear. He landed hard, injuring his leg and back, deep in German territory, with no supplies. Every shadow threatened capture. The rules were simple: evade, hide, survive. But Carr wasn't one to follow rules blindly. As he shivered in the snow, a wild, audacious plan began to form. He would not just survive, he would fight his way out. Most downed pilots ran for the border, hoping to reach Switzerland or Allied lines, but Carr, injured and exposed, knew he wouldn't make it far. The German patrols, the cold and hunger would finish him before he ever saw safety. Instead, he made a decision no one would expect. He would walk toward the enemy. German airfields were dangerous, but they had what he needed: food, warmth, and, crucially, airplanes. While others saw a death trap, Carr saw a slim chance. He limped through the snow, every step a gamble. The plan was insane, but it was the only one that might work. He set his sights on the nearest Luftwaffe base. Each painful step took him deeper into enemy territory. He was betting everything on a single desperate idea. The Wolf's Den was his only hope. For 2 days, Carr moved like a shadow through the frozen woods, surviving on melted snow and sheer willpower. He hid by day, moving only at night, always just out of sight of German patrols. Hunger gnawed at him, pain slowed him, and fear pressed in from every side. The isolation was crushing, hope faded with each hour. Exhausted and near collapse, he finally reached a road, close to his target, but at his limit. He decided to surrender at dawn, hoping for food and shelter in a POW camp. As he waited in the darkness, defeat weighed heavy, but fate intervened. Dawn revealed a German airfield, bustling with activity. The plan he'd nearly abandoned suddenly became possible again. Carr's resolve returned. He would risk everything for one last shot at freedom. From the shadowy cover of the trees, Carr's eyes locked onto a solitary, fully fueled Focke-Wulf 190 sitting at the far edge of the airfield. The snow muffled every sound, making the scene feel almost surreal, as if fate itself had placed the German fighter there just for him. Surrendering to the Germans would have been the safe, expected choice. But that fighter, gleaming, ready, and alone, was more than just an enemy plane. It was a possible ticket home, a sliver of hope in a desperate situation. Carr didn't speak a word of German. He had never even set foot inside a Focke-Wulf 190, let alone flown one. The cockpit was a maze of unfamiliar dials and switches, each one a mystery. He had no idea how to even start the engine, let alone fly the plane out of enemy territory. The risks were enormous. If he was caught, there would be no mercy. He'd almost certainly be shot on the spot as a spy or saboteur. The airfield was crawling with German soldiers, and every second he hesitated increased the danger. But the pilot in him, the part that lived for the thrill of flight and the hope of freedom, couldn't let the opportunity slip away. The urge to try, to risk everything for a chance at escape, was too strong to ignore. He crouched low, hidden by the trees, watching the airfield with tense anticipation. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring into action. He waited, heart pounding, for the perfect distraction, something to draw the guards' attention away from the lone fighter. The moment finally arrived. A sudden burst of activity swept across the airfield as German bombers prepared for takeoff. Ground crews rushed about, engines roared, and the chaos provided the cover Carr desperately needed. Seizing his chance, Carr limped from the woods, adrenaline surging through his veins. His heart hammered in his chest as he sprinted across the open, snowy field, every step bringing him closer to the plane and to freedom. He scrambled up into the cockpit, surrounded by a bewildering array of unfamiliar controls and instruments. The cold metal felt alien beneath his hands, but there was no time for hesitation. Panic threatened to overwhelm him as he stared at the maze of levers and switches, but Carr forced himself to focus, drawing on every ounce of training and courage he possessed. He began flipping switches, desperately guessing at the correct sequence, hoping his instincts as a pilot would guide him through the unfamiliar process. The engine sputtered uncertainly, then suddenly roared to life, sending a plume of smoke into the cold air. Heads turned across the airfield as the sound shattered the morning calm. Shouts erupted as German soldiers realized what was happening. They began to run toward the plane. Weapons drawn. Chaos breaking out all around. But Carr was committed now. There was no turning back. With determination etched on his face, he prepared to make his daring escape, knowing that every second counted. With the engine roaring to life, Carr shoved the throttle forward, feeling the vibration of raw power surge through the cockpit. The controls were unfamiliar, the dials and switches labeled in German, but there was no time to hesitate. Every sense was heightened, every muscle tensed for what was to come. Outside, German soldiers opened fire as he taxied toward the runway, bullets pinging off the fuselage like hail on a tin roof. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed in his ears, each shot a reminder that he was deep behind enemy lines, flying a stolen plane. He barely managed to keep the unfamiliar plane straight, wrestling with controls that responded differently than anything he'd flown before. The stick felt foreign in his grip, the pedals stiff under his boots, but instinct and training kept him moving forward. The WWII surged down the runway, its engine screaming as it gathered speed. Just as the gunfire intensified, the wheels left the ground, and Carr was airborne, escaping, but not yet safe. Now, high above the airfield, he was a lone figure in hostile skies. Every second in the air meant new dangers. Enemy flak, allied fighters who might mistake him for a foe, and the ever-present threat of running out of fuel. Carr flew low, hugging the treetops to avoid radar and enemy fighters. The landscape blurred beneath him, trees whipping past as he skimmed the canopy, heart pounding with every near miss. Every second was a test of nerve and skill. Sweat beaded on his brow as he gripped the controls, eyes darting between the sky ahead and the instruments that could betray him at any moment. The German cross on his wings made him a target for allies. His American uniform made him a target for Germans. He was trapped in a deadly paradox, hunted by both sides, with no one to trust but himself. He was a ghost, flying between worlds, neither friend nor foe, just a desperate man trying to survive. The sky seemed endless, but every cloud could hide an enemy, every shadow a threat. The fuel gauge dropped steadily. He needed to find Allied lines fast, or risk crashing in enemy territory. Each tick of the needle was a countdown, a reminder that time was running out. The initial thrill of escape faded, replaced by grim determination. There was no turning back now. Every decision, every maneuver, could mean the difference between life and death. He scanned the horizon for any sign of safety, an Allied convoy, a friendly airfield, anything that might offer hope. The world below was a patchwork of danger and possibility. The most dangerous flight of his life had just begun, and Carr knew that only his courage, skill, and a bit of luck would see him through the devil's cockpit. Carr skimmed the treetops, dodging hills and valleys at breakneck speed. He was a shadow, too low and fast for ground gunners to track. Every moment demanded total focus. One mistake meant death. He headed west, but the danger was everywhere. Allied gunners would shoot at the German plane. German fighters would hunt him down. He was alone, a man without a country. For nearly an hour, he flew this razor's edge, fuel running low. The landscape blurred beneath him, exhaustion setting in. He searched, desperately for sign of Allied territory. The escape was not over. He was still deep in enemy skies. Only a miracle landing could save him now. Carr pressed on, refusing to give in. At last, Carr spotted an American forward airbase, but approaching in a German fighter was suicide. He'd be shot down on sight. He circled, lowering his landing gear in a desperate plea for recognition. The base was on high alert, anti-aircraft guns tracking his every move. The commander hesitated, sensing something was off and ordered a hold on fire. Carr lined up for a rough landing, wrestling the unfamiliar controls. The FW-190 bounced and skidded, but he brought it to a stop. Jeeps and soldiers raced toward him, rifles raised. He threw open the canopy, hands up, shouting, "I'm an American, don't shoot!" Confusion and disbelief rippled through the ranks. After frantic explanations, the truth emerged. Carr had pulled off the impossible. He was home, but his legend was just beginning. Carr's escape became instant legend among his fellow pilots. His superiors, awed by his courage, quickly returned him to combat. He flew again with the Pioneer Mustangs, his spirit unbroken. Weeks later, Carr led 4 Mustangs against 50 German fighters. Outnumbered, he charged headlong into the enemy, breaking their formation. In the chaos, Carr shot down 4 enemy planes, becoming a fighter ace. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his heroism. The once-lost pilot was now a celebrated hero. His story inspired all who heard it. Carr's war was far from over, but he had already proven himself extraordinary. After the war, Bruce Carr's journey did not end. He continued to serve his country with unwavering dedication, flying dangerous missions in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Through the changing eras of aviation, from propellers to jets, Carr adapted and excelled, always at the forefront of his squadron. His experience and calm under pressure made him a mentor to younger pilots, many of whom looked up to him as a quiet leader who led by example rather than words. Eventually, Carr retired with the distinguished rank of colonel. Despite his remarkable achievements and the respect he earned, he never sought the spotlight or public recognition. For him, the medals and honors were simply reminders of the responsibility he carried, not badges of personal glory. He believed that true service was its own reward. Carr rarely spoke of the day he stole the Focke-Wulf and flew it to freedom. To him, it was not a tale to boast about, but a moment when duty demanded everything he had. He saw his actions as necessary, not heroic, and preferred to remember the friends he lost rather than the risks he took. When he passed away in 1998, Carr was laid to rest with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, among countless other heroes. His grave stands in quiet testimony to a life lived with integrity and courage. But Carr's story is more than just a daring escape from enemy territory. It's a lesson in courage, resourcefulness, and the power of quick thinking under pressure. His actions remind us that sometimes the most extraordinary feats are accomplished by those who never seek attention. In the face of overwhelming odds, Carr saw opportunity where others saw only danger. He trusted his instincts and training, making a split-second decision that would change the course of his life and inspire generations to come. He ran toward the fire, risking everything on his skill, nerve, and the hope that he could outfly fate itself. In that moment, he embodied the very spirit of a fighter pilot, undaunted, determined, and fiercely brave. Today, Carr's legacy endures as a symbol of quiet strength. His story reminds us that greatness often comes from the most unlikely places, and that true heroes are defined not by their fame, but by their character. Bruce Carr's journey from the frozen forests behind enemy lines to the cockpit of an enemy fighter, and finally to a place of honor among America's bravest, proves that sometimes the boldest choice is the only one that matters. His actions echo through history as a testament to the power of courage and ingenuity. True courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to act in spite of it. Carr's life teaches us that even in our darkest moments, we can find the strength to rise, to act, and to inspire others by our example.